So how are you, Jill? Thank you so much for accepting this invitation.
You're welcome. I'm good. I'm okay.
That is so nice to see you. I'm so
So
excited.
nice to see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first question I have for you is, as a publisher, what is your dream and objective when it comes to choosing a book to be published?
Okay. So, I mean, I looked at these questions before and I thought, and I wrote something, but it just occurred to me something sort of different. And I think it's good to talk about two very different types of projects. There's one kind of project where you receive a project from an agent or from an author or from someone you've worked with, and it's sort of already formed. And those are exciting because, your job is really just to make it the best it can be. And I do some books like that, but I think really my dream projects tend to be the ones that I form the idea with an author, and right from the beginning is probably my favorite thing to do.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because you just said something very interesting. I think that as an editor or publisher, in US mainly, you probably take the project from zero, right? It comes to text, you marriage the text with illustration, and then you have a whole department. Of course, HarperCollins is a big publishing company. They have everything to make it happen in a beautiful way. You have different departments, or and then obviously you start putting together this beautiful book, and even you have sales supports to give you guide of where is the best way to advertise it, to promote it, and then you also probably have to a degree some books that come to you as a book concept that it's pretty much done, and we have a book sample, and they even explain. Some of the people are very good in searching and giving you specs. I want my book in this market. I did the diligence to find out the cost in China, and I mean, I know some of these amazing authors, illustrators that are specifically to book concept. And and they even take care of finding the right eye. Like if it has like a Google eye on the book board, they even think what is the best way so the kid doesn't get a choke or a problem, right, by safety. So
no, if right, to know your audience and to know the details about how your book is going to get made makes a big difference.
It is being educated, right? You are coming with another type of client, because an author is a client, and sometimes we hope that the author becomes also a friend, and that's our goal, right? Because we want a relationship, and we want to grow together with the author, and it's like a win-win situation for the illustrator. So my next question was, what are the key elements a story needs to have for it to get your interest? Because each publisher is different. So what is your things that say, wow, I like this, I want to do this?
Well, for me, art has a lot to do with it. So if I see some beautiful art, I'm hoping that person can also write. I never want to take established relationships with other authors and editors and try and steal them. I want to find my own people. But I think a book has to have a lot of heart, like a heartbeat. So I love in history, I love the kind of the no way that couldn't have happened. No way, so we just did a book about the Women's March of 1913.
Yes.
And it's like, are you kidding? No one knew about that, and now it's so relevant. I think what we always say is we want to see something familiar with a surprising twist. So recently I saw something like that where a little girl doesn't want to go to school, and she screams so loud that her parents shrink into two tiny little peanuts, and she ends up bringing them to school with her. And so
Oh,
okay.
that's good.
It made me think about William Steig, and how in so many of his books his main character gets lost or disappears for a while, and then something has to happen to bring them back. And I think the magic is really important, and magic can be real magic, but generally it's just the magic of someone's way of looking at something that we all think about in a very creative way.
I love it. I think that you just said two key words for everybody that is going to listen to this also later on YouTube. Heartbeat.
Yeah.
Heartbeat is the secret. It's like almost telling the recipe, the ingredients, the magical ingredients, surprising element too, right?
Right.
And uniqueness that is also being honest. It is something that you're not pushing the envelope, and you're not taking, an advantage of a moment that is going on in history, but you're also being truthful to yourself, and that shows when you read it. You can tell, and you can do homework, and I like to always know the background of the author and saying, okay,
yes.
this is kind of like, fishing or trying, or is it going to be one time only?
Right. So, I mean, and at a very basic level, it has to make you want to turn the page. Yes. I have seen children pick up a book and slam it shut just because it's just not what they're looking for. And for me, it's often, I often pick serious topics, especially for historical books, but I also love humor. So if anything can be funny, I'm very happy.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that, because that's the reason why I contact you. Because when I met you, the first thing that came to my mind is I said, "Oh my God, she's so funny!"
Oh, thank you.
You're very cheerful. You're very happy, and I love the class that you were teaching in SCBWI. And and the first thing that came to my mind is like, I said, okay, she likes humor, because it's obvious that she is, very cheerful and happy person. So that's a good thing. Humor is always nice. So let me ask you the next question. It is, how important is to give a voice to the young writers from diverse backgrounds that reflects who we are as a society today?
Well, I think right now in this moment, we all know that it's crucial, more important than ever. Mm-hmm. And my personal feeling is that what we see at Harper, we see a lot of them coming in picture books as well. And I do always try to imagine reading these stories to a child. That no matter how rich the history is or how poignant the character is, the child has to have a way in and care about it. So, I also tend to maybe not want to get involved with something if I don't feel like I have enough background about it personally, because this is also, I think we have own voices, but I think there's an own voices aspect to being an editor where it's really disconcerting to go into a topic where you feel you have no knowledge at all. And that's really difficult. So I'm happy that we have so many young editors that come from different cultural backgrounds, and without a doubt you see them enjoying working on books that are from people with a similar background. Not all, but a lot. But I can tell you that we have a lot.
Yeah, actually, depends on the country that you live. That's a plus, because if you really have, or depends on the state, it doesn't have to be really the country. We can narrow it to a state, and you will see more demography, diverse demography. And when you hired also young students that are just graduated and come from different backgrounds, they themselves, because they're young, they can see it with another different eyes, or understand the culture or the story behind, right? And then you can tell, okay, we have a demographic that is, that can hold the sales, because sales are important. The story can be very good, but if you don't have the demographic, how we can push the sales, right?
Oh, and I think it's too that there are so many stories that come in about, event in the life of a family, and I think that those can succeed. But if you can point to something in the culture that has a universal feel for a child, like the kind of ice cream they eat. Someone I work with is working on a book called Kalytero Man, and that's about a little boy who waits all day and rides his bike to go get his icy snack. And then when he gets there, he doesn't have his money. And so there are some things from the culture that are involved in seeing his neighbors and his neighborhood and some Spanish words. But really, it's the universal experience of dying to have your ice cream and then finding out your money's gone.
Yeah.
So, a hook, an elevator pitch, no matter how. I'm reading a lot of submissions from fellow editors that are sort of a sad story of, leaving a poor country. And what I always say is, okay, you've got a good writer, you've got a good topic, you've got a good character, but what's the thing that kids can latch onto here?
Exactly, that they can actually see themselves in the book, or they can understand, because there has to be an element of connection, right? And if the connection gets to a part, you won't be able to reach your audience. The mom and the dad is the one who buys the book, or the grandma, but there's especially the grandmas. If you really notice in the bookstore, because I love going to bookstores and I love to observe. Observe is like my focus group, and then you can see, okay, why she's getting that book, and sometimes you can hear, conversations, and you can say, the grandma's talking and say, oh, the other day this is what I happened, and look, I found the book, and this is great. I'm going to buy it for my daughter so she can read it to mommy.
No, it's great, and like even books with tongue twisters, that books that you have to always say as an editor, do you think that the kid's going to want to hear this again and again? And there are two types of books. There are books that are sort of a little bit like medicine, we're learning something, we're thinking, we're feeling, and then there are other ones that is just a fun, like a ride on a roller coaster.
That's true. So let me then, that reminds me, that was not in the questions, but I have been later on involved in projects of poetry and, talking about sales and talking about marketing. It reminds me about, just like you have to connect with the culture and the story, make it universal, poetry or rhyming we know that there's a challenge, because sometimes we have a cultural or an actually true language barrier, and to translate it and sell those foreign rights become tricky, because it's a beautiful book, but it's just going to be one title. If it's in English, it can go to all the English speaking countries, but there's no way you are going to translate it into other countries,
unless you get someone very, very talented who
wants super talented. So let's see, the next question would be, how do you know a particular book is going to sell well in the market? Did you listen to your inner voice, or is it all based on analytical metrics?
None of my books ever sell well, so I have no idea. But but I can tell you that I work with a lot of people who are very, very good at knowing what makes sense to sign up, what to spend a lot of money on, or what to work toward developing, and what you see in all the cases where they're successful is you see the sales and marketing people being very excited right from the beginning. So our instinct to fight for books that that folks don't quite understand, often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where, you just, no one doesn't agree that it's an important topic. No one doesn't agree, but they've seen it before and they know it's not gonna really do very much. So that's heartbreaking, but, and then there's the other side of it, which is that sometimes you just don't know for a year because you have award season and you have state lists that happen, or you have an author who, suddenly blows up for some reason.
Yeah.
It's hard to know right at the beginning, and sometimes it's very patient.
Or you have Oprah, and suddenly she read,
Yeah.
the book, and boom, it makes success right? Overnight.
Totally. But at Harper, they talk a lot about Pete the Cat. And I think it was self-published and someone from in-house knew him and it got brought in, and it's like they loved it from the beginning because they're always looking for, like, you have to think of it as like there are this many slots to fill, and do we have one of these? Do we have one of these? I don't know, like for Pete the Cat, what that slot was, but maybe it just appealed to, a common denominator. I don't know, but
yeah,
it
and
worked.
one of the important things for the illustrators or authors, illustrators that are starting this career is that, they really have to put their feet on the ground, not on the sky or the clouds, because the reality is that we as publishers, we don't have a magic wand.
No.
It's not like you go like boom, 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 and that's it. It takes a lot of time, is effort. I think that at a certain level, the author has to work and promote. He cannot just wait for it to happen because we have news. It's not gonna work that way. And that's the truth. The truth is that it's a combination of all factors, right? And it's always a risk factor because this is not like something that, you are spending money, a lot of money, and we take a lot of years to see the result and, the profit.
Yep.
And that's where the risk comes from. So let's see, the next one, it is, how important is to continue educating future writers. What are the topics you like to share and teach the most?
Well, first of all, I did an MFA at the Hamlin program in St. Paul. So that was a huge just opener for me. And I got to go to, 5, 10-day courses in which we were critiqued and we workshopped and we got lectured. And so, I could make a list of 18 million things that I know are important to learn. For me personally, working mostly on picture books, I would say that I will always be the first one to tell you that, the language and what you think is a picture book is really chapter book language. I would like to talk about the relationship between narrative and dialogue, how they need to spur each other on. Again, I always loved William Steig for that. You can describe a little bit and then sort of ask a question, and then your character can answer that question in dialogue. So there's a lot of beautiful ways to do that. Pacing, I teach pacing by doing dummy workshops. I just did this yesterday with a picture book biography. I tend to try to, break everything down and build it up again. And I said to myself, yes, Jill, stop it. Why don't you see what she meant? And so I paged it out in a dummy, which is just right here, and I put the words on the page, and that way I can go through. And one thing I realized is that maybe it's not the text that needs work, it's that I need to be sure to provide the illustrator with what I imagine could go on those pages based on historical facts that I know need to be there, but he wouldn't know if I didn't tell him. It's not really that all of this information has to go in the text.
Yeah.
So creating a dummy is just, it's the best. For me, it's the best way to work.
It is the best. It is magical, definitely, because you can actually see what part is working. Oh, what part has too much text, or even, the spreadsheet, is the illustration really correlating with the text, and is amazing. So I think that these classes, this question was not in here, but I'm curious. As you recall, when did they started classes for writers? Are we talking about 10 years ago? Are we talking about more than that?
Classes for writers in children's books?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like
so,
either webinars, or like is it like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was curious.
Well, I mean, I think SEBWI started by having those conferences, and that's been going on for 30 years.
30 years at least. Okay.
Yeah, and then
what about highlights?
Highlights, oh, they're fantastic.
And they are what, 20 years on the business, or 50 years?
Yeah. I was there not too long ago, and I remember them telling the story of when did they build those cottages. So whenever it was that they built those cottages, that's when they started to have, and they built a beautiful.
We can Google it. Because that in itself might be very new in other countries. Where it might not be more than 5 years, and also acknowledging that you as an author, you still have room to grow, and you don't know everything. And I think you have to really, Ruth, is it Ruth? Ruth is going like, that is like so important.
The people who teach, I love this thing at Hamlin's program. You will have a special guest that the graduating class invited, and it would be like we had Gene Yang come, and the next thing you know, he was on the faculty, and because it's a part-time job. You go twice a year, or sometimes you only go once, and you're with Gary Schmidt was there, and Anne Ursu was there, and Phyllis Root, and you're just among people whose only job it is to share everything that they've learned from being a published writer, and you get to see their struggles, you get to hear them reading works in progress, and and I learned a lot because we did a lot of critical work too, where you examine something in craft, and I always saw it as a triangle. You took your own work, you took a subject in craft, which could be like maybe omniscient narrator, and then you took what some of the pros say about it, like in the books by Janet Burroway, and there's a whole list of these great books. Self-editing for fiction writers by Rennie Brown is one of the great ones, and then you would find an example in literature that did a good job, and you would write these papers where you examined your own writing, other people's writing, and you would put these rules that you learned in the writing books to them, and you just learn so much.
That is something I'm learning right now, because actually the concept is very new for me. Mentor text, is that correct? And I was like, in the beginning, the first time that I heard that, I said, what the heck is mentor text? And then, I said, oh my gosh, but I have been doing that without knowing. But now I know the term, and now I approach it in a different way, because one of the keys is reading, right? The more you read, the more you're going to develop your style, your voice, your ideas, and you're going to really be unique in your own way of telling a story. But you have to read a lot. So,
and that's why having access to little kids or whatever age you're working on is so important. Oh my God. Yeah,
definitely. It's very important. So let me ask another question. As a publisher, do you let the well-established authors have a say in choosing or suggesting the illustrator?
Oh, every single author that I work with has a say.
Has to say who is going to illustrate? Really?
Yeah,
That's nice.
we figure it out together, because I just would never ever force a decision. You know, I would never just tell an author, this is your illustrator.
Is that you, or is it Harper Collins, or is that you believe in that relationship?
I think a lot of people do that.
Do that? Okay.
Yeah. I think some don't, but I think maybe it's half and half. I'm not sure, but
okay.
It would be very, very foreign to me to just pick an illustrator and decide.
Okay, so that is, I was side of track here. So no, the reason why I ask you that is because I've heard a lot of your colleagues from different publishers that, you know, you really don't have a say, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, it is really, the text is so different from you as an author and the publisher company choosing who is going to
Mm-hmm.
be the illustrator, right? And of course,
Mm-hmm.
with now relationships based on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, any given author can contact directly the illustrator, you know, which many years ago you couldn't, and you could have read it. Now it's impossible. So I think the more transparent and the more communication, of course, there has to be a control, right? And there has to be a totally disciplined tool. As a publisher, as an author, you cannot jump the role of, you know, each of them. So because that's when problems start.
No, and they come about in a lot of different ways. You know, obviously, if you fall in love with an illustrator and you spend a lot of time waiting for the right text to come, you're first telling the author, I am choosing this because I would like it to be done with this illustrator. So do you approve of that? And if they don't, then you might still do the book and find a different illustrator, but you're still looking for the right text for a certain illustrator. So you have so many different situations.
And I think that's universal, right? Probably that's in different parts of the country, different parts of you know, different countries. They probably have half they choose and half they don't, and each one has its own policy or beliefs or rules. So let me ask another question. How much guide does a given author needs? Oh, that's a good one. How much guide, you know, a given author needs versus using a ghostwriter for that book to be published and sold? Because when you get a text and you get a contract with an author, and you know, some authors need a little bit more of help in developing the actual idea, concept for the project. You know, how does that work? Can you tell us how much help or how much guide?
Well, I've only done 2 projects with ghostwriters, and let me see. One of them, in both cases, it was like we knew from the beginning that there was a story that needed to be told, and we knew that the person who was basically getting their name on the book was not the person who was going to write it. And, you know, in one case, it was a child and an adult who was the ghostwriter, and they spent, you know, lots and lots and lots of time together. That child could never have written that book. So it wasn't really a case of she needed help. We needed to find someone who could portray her voice.
Of course, in a written of course.
Yeah. But and then the other one is just a celebrity book that I'm working on now, where I found someone who had a special quality that I thought kids needed to see. And so we go back and forth with each pass, and we hear from the person what they like and what they don't like, and they ask, could it be more like this and more like that. And these ghostwriters tend to be so professional, because sometimes they were editorial directors, sometimes they were authors. But it's not a usual thing for me in the kind of books that I do.
Yeah, but it's a valid proposition, right? It depends on the story. It is a valid proposition to use a ghostwriter, right? Especially in those
If you have a special story to
yeah.
tell.
And
And you know, because I always say there are experts and there are writers. And
yes.
if you can be an expert and a writer, then you can tell your story.
Great.
If you're only an expert, then by all means find someone to help you tell the story.
And out of curiosity, because this was also not in the question, how does the ghostwriter gets paid? He gets paid only one time, right, for the job. He doesn't get royalties, right? Or does he get royalties?
Not, in the two that I'm working on, I had originally set out for the ghostwriter to get a royalty, but it didn't work out. By the end of the negotiation,
Mm-hmm.
the star wanted all the money.
Yeah.
So
in that case, you just paid for the job. That's it. He just
and we try to pay more, because it's also often a rush, you know. So you're basically saying, I've got to take up the next 3 months of your life. I better pay you well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that's good to know. That's interesting. And let's see here. Why it took so long for publishers acknowledge the importance of books with African American people on it, made by African American authors and illustrators. Do you want to jump to the next link, or do you want to answer this in less than 1 minute? Because we have.
Well, no, I mean, I just don't think it's true. I mean, gosh, I was started in 1992, and the first book I worked on was by Faith Ringgold, and it was about, you know, it was right after Tar Beach, and it was Martin Luther King, and I think there were just certain publishers, this was at Knopf and Crown, who always were doing these kinds of books. And I've never stopped doing them. So I do get irritated sometimes when I hear that no one's doing them, because we just have never stopped doing them. But what I was going to say was, I think it reached critical mass when we started to have stars, when we started to have Jackie Woodson and Jason Reynolds, you know, and social media made a huge difference, right? Because when did you see authors, you know, who was like the really first big famous children's book person was like, I mean, Maurice Sendak and Judy Blume. That's true. And you never saw them. I was thinking that social media made a big difference, and that we needed some people who kind of had star quality. It's just something that I noticed. But, you know, we've had amazing, you know, Black and brown writers forever and ever and ever. I think the thing we're still fighting with is this idea of, well, we already have one of those, you know, whereas you could have, you know, 30 books on your list about, you know, white teens having some kind of a John Green kind of experience. But the minute it's 2 more Black teens, well, we already have one like that, and it's, you know, and it's urban, and, you know, well, so I think that's finally ending.
So I think that maybe what is missing is that the media, of course, have to be more truthful and do a better homework and help us to promote that this already really exists. There are good titles. And, you know,
oh my God,
right now they're promoting like crazy, right? I mean, you open every single Instagram, every single Facebook, and everybody's promoting it. And I'm saying, gosh, this already was 13 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yes.
Why wait, you know, why not? Yes. And also the key here is not just now, is through every single month, through every single year, every opportunity. Is not just about one ethnicity, it's about all the ethnicities. You know, give them the opportunity to be interviewed on TV, on radio, give them, you know, free advertising, because and also inviting the self-published authors to participate in these important prizes whenever they can, of course, because there's all kind of rules. So then they have an opportunity to also being acknowledged and being able to win a prize. You know,
at the same time as I can tell you that most editors have been working on books with African American writers and illustrators forever and looking for more. I think the real key is having more executives who are African American and Latinx and, representing all of these different backgrounds, because that's the organic way to grow those publishing programs.
Yeah.
And to, because for so many reasons.
Yeah, and maybe, the podcasts, the for example, I think it's called Kit Lit, Diverse. There's another one right now, I think it's called Read Around the World. They have an audience, a captive audience. Maybe they use that strength to pull out a variety of authors from different nationalities, it will all help. And in the bookstores, to be honest with you, when I see a lot of books, there's a particular month of the year that you're going to see in the end caps books. And, of course, that is called marketing, because you want to push the book, right? It's about, it's about like Halloween. We're not talking about any ethnicity. We're talking about a holiday. Of course, we're not going to talk the whole year around about Halloween.
Right.
But you can talk about Asian authors, Hispanic authors, American authors, all kinds of authors all around the year, because we're not married with a theme of St. Valentine's, or it's just two different things. And maybe the bookstores have to be more conscious on that, and pull a little bit more upfront, really a diverse, not only the best 10, because the best 10, I'm so sorry, Jill, but sometimes you're missing someone phenomenal that not had, their book on the 10.
Well, and I mean, look at the
bad or worst.
The awards that are given out by the American Library Association tend to be often for American writers, and so then we'll miss opportunities to win big awards, and that always makes a difference in the life of an author. How do they get seen is a big question.
Yeah. One of the things is someone told me, I think it was Harold or someone else, that they said that many years ago, the author that would win this prize of Caldecott, I believe so, it was an interview in
the next morning. They would be on TV. Yeah, they would be on TV the next morning.
For some reason, they don't do that anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know why they did it, or I don't know why they don't do it anymore.
Maybe because they don't have a sponsorship, because of course everything has to be through sponsorship. So I don't know.
But I could see that changing this year. Because right now everyone's looking for any opportunity to speak to children, to talk about books, and to get content for television, because we're all sitting there watching television. I've been so amazed during the pandemic and also the Black Lives Matter moment, how fast everyone works. It's just incredible. Yeah. Even I'm recording videos of myself reading books that Harper puts out.
Nice.
Yeah,
it is really, the pandemic, what was and is still depends on the country where you live, because we're still in quarantine here, and depends on the country where you are. It has been amazing how really we have understand that there's a need of solidarity, and this solidarity should be not just now, should be there forever in different circumstances, because we do need it. And of course, what happened in US is extremely sad, and that created movements around the world. And again, it's amazing how different countries supported and demonstrate their feelings and their empathy. And we're living difficult moments, and we, as an authors or artist, one of the first things that I saw, Jill, is like, my gosh, I can be in quarantine because of art. Because if there was no art in this world, I don't know.
It's just amazing.
It would be very tough. It would be so tough.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, think about
People are
music.
doing such beautiful work.
Oh
Yes.
my God, the musicians, you know, the soul that we have felt because we are artists at the end of the day, right? And
Right.
we are navigating through this because of art, and you know, and that's one of the good things that brought all this. And my last question is:
Okay.
the word diversity is just fashionable or not? Has it been the last 5 years that we have exploited and used it as a marketing tool, or it was always there?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, when I started in publishing in the 90s, it was the golden age of folk tales. And it would have been what the equivalent now is. It was people looking for old stories from every culture. And I'm just trying to remember if I think folk tales just gave you the sense that they could come from anywhere. They could come from Africa, they could come, and you would just put in front of it, you know, a Native American folk tale. And diversity started to become this buzzword, but I felt very quickly that it started to become a euphemism. So instead of saying black, they would say diverse. And it's still happening now. But when I hear the word diverse now, I cringe because I just want to know who you're talking about, you know. And today I was writing something and I used the word inclusive rather than diverse. And I do think it's time to just say what you mean. That's how I feel.
Put it with the right words, right? Put it, be honest.
Yeah.
Put it with the right
Yeah.
words. Yeah,
Yeah.
be honest. I mean, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're talking to kids. Kids are not dumb. They're so smart. You cannot
Right.
fool a child. You know, he knows when you're coming and
Show
going.
me a diverse child. Like
Yeah,
I'm diverse. Well,
yeah, we are.
yeah,
Right? Yeah, and we are, how you say this word, multitask too.
yeah.
So,
But and I just recommend, I think, for people who, really have an important message or really feel that they're um up there, you do really benefit from trying to go to meet these agents, because they're the ones who really make the dreams come true for these guys. I mean, I'm the kind of person who will buy a book for a regular amount. I'm not participating in all of these big auctions, but I see them happen all the time.
yeah.
And these people find their way to the agents, and I do think if you're really invested in your career, uh, you know then it's worth putting yourself out there for that, because what's the worst that can happen? You don't hear back, but maybe you're going to meet the right agent.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to talk to Pat Cummings, and
Uh-huh.
we're talking about how really it's important to be transmitting your message, the voice that you want to the what is exactly what you're writing, for whom you're writing, and
Right.
don't use the opportunity or a wave or a movement just for the sake of it. Use it because you
Right.
really believe on it. And
Yep.
and one of the things that I loved, and I also wanted to call you and ask you to accept this interview, is because I love the adventure that you took with that book of voting. What is the title?
Oh, how
Yes,
women
yes,
won the
yes.
vote.
Because I saw your interview or your webinar with the
Yeah.
author, and
Uh-huh.
oh my gosh, we're talking about that, right? We're talking about,
Right.
okay, this is important. This is still an actual issue, and yeah, there's a lot of book of feminisms. So suddenly that also came fashionable. How
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
books of feminism have come, and they
Yeah.
will still come. But the proposition is valid as long as you have a very good reason for it. But if you're just going to get that flag, oh, I'm going to be today feminist, well, good
Right.
luck, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, and with that book too, where there's a picture in there of the women protesting in front of the White House, which is happening right now, and the Black women who wanted to march in the parade, but they were asked not to.
Yes.
And there's pictures of them, and it's just invites you to find out so much more. But at the same time, it tells the story like, the mentor text for that was Louise Borden's book, The Journey That Saved Curious George. And that was, being someone who did a lot of nonfiction, when I saw that book that integrated photos, archival photos with illustration, I had this revelation. Ah, my God, that's the way to do it, because it's like a salad. You get to see a little bit of everything, and
I want to read that book as well and understand more.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Come from. Yeah, that's great. So let me open the possibilities for anybody has a question, would like to comment something. We still have another 10 minutes that we can share. Okay, let's say, I have a question here. It says, which subject do you like most to work with illustrations? Oh, that's nice. For example, I love illustrate lovely things to other people to feel good feelings too. So I guess in the illustrations, do you like more, what topic or what it moves you, Jill?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm obsessed with expressions.
Expressions. So, feelings.
Yeah, feelings. So it's, whenever I look at an illustrator, if there's a story that has emotion in it, and that illustrator can get it through with an expression, if you look at like Serge Bloch, the French illustrator, or Beatrice Alemania, who I work with as well, you feel everything. And to me, the kinds of books I like to work on are the ones where you really feel something. You really don't even need the words, maybe. And I love deep colors, and I love, beautiful line. I have a little bit of a harder time finding the perfect illustrator for something that's funny, even though I love a funny text. So I think that's one reason why a lot of us work with an author illustrator, because they come with the vision and the story, and you don't have to who would that be good for? I don't know, Great. I don't know if I answered the question or if I understood it.
That's what I was going to ask Jillian. Jillian, did she answer your question? If you can write yes. Okay. She said thank you, and she sent you a heart.
Okay, thank you.
So that means yes. Yeah, and she said yes. Okay.
Okay.
So that's great. Anybody else? Okay. We're just gonna wait. What I think no. Okay. Let's see.
I'd like to say I really, really appreciate hearing you both. The questions have been fascinating, and the answers have been very enlightening too. So thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Great. So, Jill, really thank you so much for this. It has been
so welcome
talking to you, and I hope that the quarantine has been kind to you and your family, and you guys.
Oh yeah, we're fine.
To cope with all this and staying at home.
We're lucky. Yeah, we're lucky. We just have one son who's graduating high school right now, so he went back to the city, and we'll see. I hope he stays safe. Ugh.
Because where are you, in New York?
I'm in Long Island, at the end of
Long Island. Yeah.
So, but he went back to the city. So, and where are you?
We're in Brazil.
We're in Brazil. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Like an hour from Sao Paulo, and we're still in quarantine. I think that we're gonna go at least this month. I would say
that was Ruth. I knew that was Ruth. Hi, Ruth. I was gonna say, is that you?
That's Ruth with the talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Ruth.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna go longer than that. I don't know. I know that we're still in June here at home. I'm not sure what in the world, it's gonna happen in July. Are we gonna continue being in the house? I don't have no idea.
I know.
Yeah, but
it's weird. Every week it changes. So
every day.
Yeah. I used to have a neighbor who was a political philosopher, and I posted this on my Facebook one day, and he was studied modernism, and his definition of modernism was I can't even remember it, but it's basically said at any moment you could have the best of everything and every dream come true, and it could all go away in a flash. And that's just this life. It's like it's so unpredictable. But hopefully it comes back.
Yeah, and we have been learning a lot, and we have been learning that we need always to have a plan B, in everything, in all the sectors, and we as authors and illustrators, and publishers too, we're used to work right from the house. Well, probably a lot of publishers would continue loving to working from house. That's going to be interesting to see what is going to happen.
Yes.
You guys are going to want to go back because you need to, because you have your meetings, because it's more practical, or if some of the publishers are going to do a new model and work from home. We don't know yet.
But to be able to take an hour here and an hour there, and to bake a bread or to cook something, and you just feel like your life is so much more balanced. So that's the silver lining, I never knew what that felt like, because I never fed my kids dinner, and they were always like, "Where's dinner?"
And now they know.
Now they know.
Anyway, but thank you, everybody. Take care. Continue taking care, everyone.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you for listening. Thank you, Jill. A big hug to you. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.